So today I ended up chairing a course that was made up of 3 different presenters. So myself and Dr. Kavita Nair and Dr. Enrique Alvarez from the Rocky Mountain MS group from the University of Colorado. And today's course overall was a synopsis of the emerging research landscape in multiple sclerosis. Specifically, we wanted to focus in on how to understand, analyze, and interpret the different study designs that are currently in existence in the MS research landscape. But we also wanted to focus in on different research methodologies that are becoming more popularized now that we have different sorts of outcome measures that are being developed, and also looking at how real-world effectiveness can complement randomized controlled clinical trials when we are trying to make conclusions on comparative effectiveness between existing disease-modifying therapies. And the reason why we find especially the latter is so important is because there are new drugs being developed very consistently, and there are new drugs that are being pioneered. And because of the plethora of drug development that we have in MS, we understand that these drugs are going to become increasingly more challenging to compare head-to-head. And randomized controlled clinical trials are not going to be able to satisfy that unmet need. And where we have some benefit is we can start employing some unique statistical methods to turn very messy retrospective observational data into a usable format so that we can make outcomes analysis and looking at treatment effect differences between 2 different interventions, where we're essentially comparing apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges. And part of the discussion of the course today was learning about a statistical method called propensity score adjustment that we can actually employ to essentially extrapolate usable data from very messy observational real-world data. They are growing exponentially in interest. And again, this has to do with the emerging research landscape, the drug development landscape, where we have a very quickly growing armamentarium of available disease-modifying therapies. And we're no longer going to be able to just rely on RCTs because we're just not going to have those comparisons. And being able to leverage what we're seeing in real-world practice using all sorts of different data sets from different institutions is going to play an increasingly important role. And where we really need to be conscientious is using statistical methods to make sure that we are comparing our patients adequately. So meaning that we want to make sure that our populations are similar enough so that way we are able to compare apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges. And something called indication bias becomes a potential problem when we're trying to make conclusions on treatment effect differences between 2 different therapies. So we have to be very careful about that. And that's where the propensity score methodologies certainly have an important use in our real-world effectiveness retrospective observational studies.